For thousands of years, kingdoms rose from deserts, river valleys, and mountain plains. Their rulers built magnificent temples, towering palaces, and walls that stretched beyond the horizon. They conquered rivals, minted coins, wrote laws into stone, and believed their civilizations would endure forever. Yet today, most of those empires exist only in ruins. Their languages have faded. Their kings have become names in history books. Their monuments stand weathered by wind and time. But something else survived. Not their armies, not their wealth, their ideas. And nowhere is that more evident than in the laws they left behind. As one civilization disappeared, another inherited fragments of its legal thinking. Babylon influenced neighboring kingdoms. Greek ideas shaped Roman jurisprudence. Roman law later became one of the foundations of many European legal traditions. In Asia, philosophical debates between Confucian scholars and legalist thinkers continued to influence systems of governance for centuries. The civilizations themselves vanished. The questions they wrestled with never did. How much power should a government have? Should punishment focus on revenge, deterrence, or rehabilitation? Can justice exist without equality? Should morality and law always be connected? These are not modern debates. They are ancient conversations that humanity is still having. And this is where the strangest laws become far more than historical curiosities. Consider the Babylonian builder who could face execution if a house collapsed. Today, no architect is punished in that way. Yet building codes, engineering licenses, inspections, and legal liability all exist because societies still believe those who construct our homes carry enormous responsibility. The punishment changed, the principle survived. Think about the Egyptian obsession with protecting tombs. Modern nations maintain strict laws safeguarding archaeological sites, museums, and cultural heritage. Destroying ancient monuments is considered a serious crime in many countries because these places preserve humanity's collective memory. Again, the reasoning evolved, the underlying idea remained. Athens feared that a single popular leader could become too powerful. Modern democracies answer that same concern with constitutions, independent courts, term limits, elections, and systems of checks and balances. Different solution, identical question. Rome carefully defined contracts, ownership, inheritance, and legal procedures. Centuries later, many legal systems around the world continued to recognize similar concepts, although they have been reshaped through centuries of legal development and adapted to modern principles of equality and human rights. China standardized measurements, currency, and infrastructure to unify a vast empire. Today, international standards govern everything from shipping containers and aviation safety to electrical systems and digital communications. Civilizations separated by more than 2,000 years often arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Order requires common rules. Yet perhaps the greatest lesson hidden within these ancient laws is not how different our ancestors were. It is how familiar they become once we understand the problems they faced. Imagine standing in Babylon nearly 4,000 years ago. You're a merchant negotiating a trade agreement. Without trusted contracts, every deal carries enormous risk. Now imagine living in Rome. You inherit your father's property. Without legal rules, ownership becomes uncertain. Or picture yourself in imperial China. Different provinces use different weights, different coins, and different measurements. Trade slows, taxes become confusing, government weakens. Every strange law emerged from a real human challenge. Sometimes the solution was brilliant. Sometimes it was deeply unfair. Sometimes it was both at once. History rarely offers simple heroes or villains. It offers people trying to solve difficult problems with the knowledge available to them. That does not mean we should excuse injustice. The legal systems of the ancient world often reflected profound inequalities. Women frequently possessed fewer legal rights than men. Enslaved people were denied fundamental freedoms. Punishments could be severe by modern standards. Social class often determined how justice was applied. These realities deserve honest recognition. Progress did not move in a straight line. Human rights, equal protection under the law, and the presumption of innocence developed gradually through centuries of debate, reform, and struggle. Many principles we now consider fundamental were absent or applied very differently in the ancient world. Understanding history means appreciating both the achievements and the limitations of those who came before us. Perhaps that is why studying ancient laws is so fascinating. They force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. If we had been born in Babylon, Athens, Rome, Persia, Egypt, India, or ancient China, most of us would probably have accepted those legal systems as normal, as we often accept the laws surrounding us today without questioning how they came to exist. Every generation believes its legal system is logical. History reminds us that future generations may see some of our own laws as equally strange. That realization changes everything. The weirdest laws in ancient history are not merely stories about bizarre punishments or unusual customs. They are mirrors. They reflect humanity's endless struggle to balance freedom with security, justice with authority, tradition with change, individual rights with the needs of society. And that struggle has never truly ended. Across thousands of years, one simple truth echoes through every civilization. Laws are never just rules. They are a reflection of what a society fears, what it values, and what it hopes to become. Long after kings disappear, long after empires fall, long after stone monuments crumble into dust, those ideas continue to shape the world we live in. So perhaps the next time you encounter a law that seems obvious, ordinary, or unquestionable, pause for just a moment. Ask yourself a simple question. Will people 2,000 years from now look back at our laws with the very same astonishment that we feel when reading those carved into ancient stone? Because if history has taught us anything, it is that today's common sense may become tomorrow's strangest law.
The sun rises over vast landscapes stretching far beyond the Mediterranean. Snow-covered mountains cast long shadows across ancient trade routes. Endless deserts give way to fertile river valleys. Dense forests surround growing cities where scholars, priests, merchants, and emperors struggle with the same timeless question that had shaped every civilization before them. How do you govern millions of people who speak different languages, follow different traditions, and believe in different gods? In the East, the answer was rarely simple. Some kingdoms trusted morality, others trusted fear. Many attempted to balance both. The result was a collection of legal systems unlike anything the ancient Mediterranean had ever imagined. Our first stop is the mighty Persian Empire. By the 6th century BCE, the Persian Empire stretched across an astonishing expanse, from the Indus Valley in the east to the shores of the Aegean in the west. It united dozens of peoples, cultures, and religions under a single crown, making it one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. Ruling such a vast territory required more than military strength. It required trust. Unlike many conquerors, Persian rulers, particularly under Cyrus the Great, often allowed conquered peoples to continue practicing their own religions and customs, provided they remained loyal to the empire and paid their taxes. This policy of relative tolerance helped maintain stability across enormous distances. To modern audiences, this may not seem like a strange law, but in the ancient world, it was remarkably unusual. Many empires demanded complete cultural submission. Persia often chose cooperation instead. The empire established royal roads stretching thousands of kilometers. Messengers could travel with astonishing speed, carrying official decrees across the empire through relay stations that operated day and night. This administrative network helped ensure that laws reached even the most distant provinces. A famous Greek historian later described the royal couriers with words that would inspire postal services centuries afterward. Neither snow, rain, heat, nor darkness prevented them from completing their journeys. For Persia, a law had little value if it could not reach the people expected to obey it. Yet even this relatively tolerant empire relied on strict accountability. Regional governors, known as satraps, possessed enormous authority. To prevent corruption or rebellion, the king dispatched royal inspectors, sometimes called the king's eyes and ears, who traveled throughout the empire, reporting directly to the throne. No governor could ever be entirely certain when an inspector might arrive. Power itself was placed under surveillance. Thousands of kilometers away, another civilization was developing legal ideas rooted not only in government, but also in philosophy and spirituality: ancient India. Unlike many legal systems centered primarily on punishment, several early Indian legal traditions placed extraordinary emphasis on dharma, a concept encompassing duty, morality, social responsibility, and the proper order of life. Law was not viewed simply as a list of prohibited actions. It was connected to maintaining harmony within society and the universe. Texts such as the Manusmriti, compiled over centuries and reflecting particular legal and social traditions of ancient India, described rules concerning family life, inheritance, contracts, property, and social obligations. Modern scholars emphasize that these texts did not necessarily represent the daily legal practice everywhere across the Indian subcontinent. Ancient India was vast and diverse, with many regional customs existing alongside written legal traditions. Nevertheless, they reveal how closely law and morality were intertwined. One striking feature was that legal responsibilities could differ according to social role, occupation, age, and community. Today, equality before the law is considered a fundamental principle in many countries. Ancient legal systems often viewed society differently. Justice, in their eyes, sometimes meant preserving an established social order rather than treating every individual identically. Whether we agree with that idea or not, understanding it helps us appreciate how dramatically human concepts of justice have evolved. Further east, another civilization pursued perhaps the most ambitious legal experiment in ancient history: China. For centuries, Chinese philosophers debated a profound question: are people naturally good, or must they be controlled through strict laws? Two competing thoughts emerged. Confucian thinkers argued that moral education, good leadership, and virtuous example created stable societies. Legalist philosophers reached a very different conclusion. They believed that human beings naturally pursued their own interests. If rulers depended solely on virtue, disorder would inevitably follow. Only clear laws, consistently enforced with rewards and severe punishments, could guarantee stability. This debate would transform China forever. In 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang unified rival kingdoms to establish the Qin dynasty, creating China's first unified imperial state. Determined to strengthen central authority, Qin officials embraced many legalist principles. Weights and measures were standardized, coinage became more uniform,
Road systems expanded. Even the width of wagon axles was standardized in many places so carts could travel efficiently along imperial roads. At first glance, these may seem mundane administrative decisions. In reality, they were revolutionary. Standardization allowed trade, taxation, communication, and military logistics to function across an empire of extraordinary size. The law was shaping not just human behavior, but infrastructure itself. Yet, legalism also became known for its severity. Historical records describe harsh punishments for certain offenses and emphasize the importance of collective responsibility, where families or communities could sometimes face consequences connected to serious crimes committed by one member. Historians continued to debate how consistently these measures were applied in practice, but the underlying philosophy is clear. Fear was considered an essential tool of governance. To legalist rulers, certainty of punishment mattered more than compassion. They believed predictable consequences discouraged disorder before it could begin. The Qin dynasty itself proved remarkably short-lived, lasting only about 15 years. Following its collapse, the Han dynasty retained many administrative innovations while placing greater emphasis on Confucian ideals of moral leadership. China's legal tradition became a blend of bureaucracy, philosophy, and practical governance that would influence East Asia for centuries. Looking across Persia, India, and China, a fascinating pattern begins to emerge. The strangest laws were rarely created simply because rulers enjoyed exercising power. Behind almost every unusual rule lay a deeper fear. Fear of rebellion, fear of corruption, fear of social collapse, fear that civilization itself was more fragile than it appeared. Every law was an attempt, sometimes wise, sometimes deeply flawed, to hold society together. And perhaps that's the greatest surprise of all. The laws that seem bizarre today often addressed problems that still exist. Governments still struggle with corruption. Cities still regulate construction standards. Medical professionals still operate under legal accountability. States still debate how much power leaders should possess. The details have changed. The questions have not. As our journey approaches its final chapter, we'll discover how some of these ancient legal ideas survived long after the civilizations that created them. We'll uncover which weird laws quietly shaped the modern world, and we'll confront one final realization that changes the way we think about justice itself. Because the strangest laws in history may not be the ones carved into ancient stone. They may be the invisible rules we continue to live by today without ever stopping to question them.
The Mediterranean shimmered beneath the morning sun, its blue waters connecting hundreds of cities, kingdoms, and cultures. Merchant ships carried olive oil, wine, silver, and spices from one shore to another. Philosophers debated the meaning of justice beneath marble columns. Soldiers marched across mountains and deserts in the name of expanding empires. To many people today, ancient Greece and ancient Rome represent the birth of Western civilization. They gave the world democracy, philosophy, architecture, engineering, and ideas that still influence modern governments. But beneath this remarkable legacy existed a legal world that could feel surprisingly unfamiliar. Some laws encouraged civic responsibility, others controlled nearly every aspect of daily life, and a few seem so unusual that they almost sound fictional. Yet each one reveals how these civilizations understood order, honor, and power. In ancient Athens, during the 5th century BCE, democracy was something extraordinary, but it looked very different from modern democracy. Citizens gathered in massive public assemblies to vote directly on laws, military campaigns, and political decisions. However, not everyone counted as a citizen. Women, enslaved people, and most foreigners living in Athens had no political voice. The system depended on participation from eligible male citizens. Surprisingly, refusing to participate in public life could itself become a serious social issue. The Greeks believed that citizenship was not simply a privilege, it was a duty. Someone who deliberately ignored public affairs while enjoying the benefits of the city was viewed with suspicion. In fact, the Greek word idios originally referred to a private individual who avoided civic responsibilities rather than engaging in public matters. Over centuries, the meaning evolved into the modern English word idiot. The change reminds us how deeply Athenians valued participation in public life. To them, ignoring politics was not merely laziness, it weakened the entire community. But perhaps one of Athens' strangest legal traditions was something called ostracism. Each year, citizens could vote on whether someone had become dangerously powerful. If enough people believed one individual threatened the stability of the city, citizens would scratch that person's name onto broken pieces of pottery called ostraca. If thousands of votes accumulated against the same person, that individual was required to leave Athens for 10 years. No crime needed to be proven. No trial for treason was necessary. The person kept their property, their family remained safe, but they had to leave. To modernize, banishing someone based largely on public opinion seems deeply unfair. Yet Athenians saw ostracism as a peaceful alternative to civil war. Instead of allowing ambitious leaders to divide society through violence, they temporarily removed potential sources of conflict before bloodshed could begin. It was an extraordinary attempt to protect democracy by limiting individual power. Whether it always worked is another question. Sometimes respected military commanders, successful politicians, and influential reformers found themselves exiled simply because they had become too popular or too controversial. The law reflected one of democracy's oldest fears. Could a hero become a tyrant? As Greece expanded its influence, another civilization across the sea was quietly transforming itself into one of history's greatest empires, Rome. Roman law would eventually influence legal systems across Europe, the Americas, and countless other parts of the world. Many legal principles we recognize today, including contracts, property rights, and aspects of civil law, trace part of their development to Rome. But everyday Roman life was governed by rules that could feel remarkably strict. Status mattered enormously. A senator lived under different expectations than a merchant. A free citizen possessed rights unavailable to enslaved people. Even clothing carried legal meaning. One of Rome's most recognizable garments, the toga, was not simply fashion, it represented citizenship. Only certain Roman male citizens were entitled to wear specific forms of the toga in public. Colors, decorative stripes, and styles communicated rank, political office, or social standing. The famous purple dye, extracted from Mediterranean sea snails, became one of the most expensive substances in the ancient world. Its rarity made it a symbol of supreme authority. During the imperial period, elaborate restrictions surrounded its use, reinforcing the emperor's exceptional status. The law itself became visible through clothing. One glance across a crowded forum could reveal who possessed power. Rome also maintained surprisingly detailed rules surrounding funerals. Elite families often competed to display enormous wealth during funeral processions. Musicians filled the streets. Professional mourners cried dramatically. Lavish decorations accompanied the deceased. Over time, lawmakers worried these displays encouraged excessive funeral spending, restricting luxury, extravagant displays, and certain public performances.
The goal was not to eliminate mourning, it was to prevent wealth from overwhelming civic equality and public order. Even grief could be regulated. Another remarkable area of Roman law involved the authority of the family. The oldest living male in many Roman households, known as the pater familias, possessed extensive legal authority over family property and many household decisions. By modern standards, these powers appear extraordinarily broad. Yet over centuries, legal reforms gradually reduced some of the most extreme aspects of this authority as Roman society evolved. Law was never completely fixed, it changed alongside the civilization itself. Yet perhaps the most dramatic legal principle of Rome was one that still echoes today. No one is above the law. Although Roman society certainly failed to apply justice equally, especially across different social classes, the growing idea that written law should outlast individual rulers became one of Rome's greatest contributions to legal history. Emperors came and went, generals rose and fell, but legal institutions increasingly sought permanence beyond any single person. It was an ambitious vision, and it helped an empire govern millions of people across 3 continents. Still, not every Roman law reflected fairness. Public punishments served as spectacles. Slavery remained deeply embedded within Roman society. Social rank often determined legal outcomes. The empire combined remarkable legal sophistication with profound inequality. This contradiction forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Civilizations capable of incredible achievements can also create systems that many people experience as deeply unjust. The greatness of an empire does not guarantee the fairness of its laws. As the centuries passed, legal systems continued to grow more complex. Across Asia, powerful kingdoms were developing entirely different answers to the same timeless question: how should society balance freedom with order? Some rulers believed morality should guide the law. Others believed strict punishment alone preserved civilization. And in one empire, officials created laws so detailed they attempted to regulate nearly every aspect of human behavior. The journey was about to take us east into Persia, India, and China, where some of history's most fascinating legal experiments would challenge everything we think we know about justice.
Before the pyramids reached towards the sky, before emperors ruled continents, before humanity learned to write history as we know it, there was one invention that quietly reshaped civilization forever: the law. Not the idea of justice, not the promise of fairness, but rules. Strange, unforgiving, sometimes terrifying rules that determined who could live freely, who would suffer, and in some cases, who could die for the smallest mistake. Imagine waking up one morning in a city nearly 4,000 years ago. You step outside into crowded streets lined with mud brick houses. Merchants shout over one another. Farmers arrive with carts of grain. Priests burn incense beneath towering temples. Soldiers patrol the marketplace with bronze spears catching the morning sun. Everything appears orderly, but hidden beneath that order is an invisible force controlling every conversation, every business deal, every marriage, every family, and every decision you make. Break one rule and your life could change forever. Not because you were evil, not because you intended harm, but because ancient civilizations believed that even the smallest actions could threaten the balance of society. And balance, they believed, was worth almost any price. Some laws punished builders if a house collapsed. Others determined exactly how much a doctor should be paid, depending on whether the patient survived. Some decided what ordinary people were allowed to wear. Others even regulated how loudly someone could mourn the dead. To modernize, many of these laws seem absurd.
Others appear unimaginably cruel. Yet every one of them tells us something extraordinary. These weren't random rules created by irrational people. They were windows into civilizations that viewed the world through completely different eyes. The strangest laws in history often reveal the deepest fears of the societies that created them. And that's where our journey begins. Thousands of years before modern governments, before police departments, before constitutions and human rights, humanity was experimenting with a question that still defines every nation today. How do you control millions of imperfect people? The answers were often stranger than fiction. Our first destination lies between two rivers, a land where civilization itself first learned to write: Mesopotamia. Nearly 4,000 years ago, the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were home to bustling cities unlike anything the world had seen before. Massive temples dominated the skyline. Irrigation canals transformed dry land into fields of barley and wheat. Merchants carried goods from distant kingdoms, while scribes carefully pressed symbols into soft clay tablets, preserving contracts, taxes, and stories that would survive thousands of years. Life was becoming more complex. With larger populations came greater opportunity, but also greater conflict. Who owned the land? What happened if someone stole livestock? Who paid when an irrigation canal flooded a neighbor's farm? How should murder, theft, or fraud be punished? Without clear rules, cities could descend into violence. One king believed he had found the answer. His name was Hammurabi. Around 1754 BCE, a Babylonian ruler commissioned one of history's most famous legal codes. Carved into a towering black stone stele, standing over 2 meters tall, hundreds of laws were etched into its polished surface beneath an image of the king receiving authority from the sun god Shamash. The message was unmistakable. These laws were not merely human opinions, they carried divine authority. Today, the Code of Hammurabi is remembered for one phrase that echoes across history: an eye for an eye. But that famous expression barely scratches the surface. Many of its laws seem astonishingly unusual today. Consider one of the most famous. If a builder constructed a house and the building collapsed, killing the owner, the builder himself could be put to death. If the collapse killed the owner's son, the builder's own son could be executed instead. To modern readers, the punishment feels profoundly unjust. Why should an innocent child suffer for another person's mistake? Yet to Babylonian society, family represented responsibility across generations. A household functioned as a single social unit, and punishment reflected that collective understanding rather than modern ideas of individual accountability. Harsh as it seems, the law also sent a powerful message to every architect and craftsman. Build carefully. Lives depend on your work. Thousands of years before engineering licenses or building inspections, Babylon attempted to enforce professional responsibility through fear itself. Another law dealt with medicine. If a surgeon successfully operated on a wealthy patient using a bronze knife, he would receive a generous reward. But if the patient died, the surgeon's hands could be cut off. Imagine practicing medicine under those conditions. Every operation carried not only the risk of losing a patient, but also the possibility of ending your own career and your own ability to practice forever. The law reflected the enormous value placed on skilled professionals, while simultaneously imposing terrifying consequences for failure. Whether every punishment was consistently carried out remains uncertain. Historians believe some of these laws functioned as ideal standards rather than routine practice. Even so, their existence reveals a society attempting something revolutionary. For perhaps the first time in history, justice was being written down where everyone could see it. The rich and the poor did not always receive equal treatment. Punishments often varied depending on social status, with nobles, commoners, and enslaved people subject to different legal outcomes for similar offenses. To modern standards, this inequality is striking, yet compared to purely arbitrary rule, publicly displayed laws represented a remarkable step forward. At least people knew the rules before judgment was passed. But Babylon was only the beginning. Far to the southwest, another civilization flourished along a river whose annual floods created one of history's greatest kingdoms, ancient Egypt. Unlike Mesopotamia's emphasis on detailed written legal codes, Egyptian justice revolved around a powerful spiritual idea, Ma'at. More than a goddess, Ma'at represented truth, harmony, balance, and cosmic order. Egyptians believed the universe itself depended on maintaining this delicate equilibrium. Pharaohs ruled not simply as political leaders, but as guardians of Ma'at, responsible for preserving order against the ever-present threat of chaos. This belief shaped every aspect of Egyptian law. To steal was not merely to take property, it was to weaken the balance holding the entire world together. To lie under oath was not simply dishonest, it challenged the divine order established by the gods themselves. Even the afterlife depended on legal and moral conduct. Egyptians believed that after death, each person's heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart proved heavier than the feather, burdened by lies, injustice, or wrongdoing, it would be devoured by the fearsome creature Amit, ending the soul's existence forever. Law, morality, and religion were inseparable. One particularly fascinating legal reality concerned tomb robbery. To modern observers, stealing from the dead might appear less urgent than harming the living. To ancient Egyptians, it ranked among the gravest imaginable crimes. Royal tombs were designed to preserve a person's eternal existence. Disturbing them threatened not only valuable treasures, but the spiritual destiny of the deceased. Punishments could include execution, mutilation, or forced labor, depending on period and severity of the crime. Ironically, despite these severe penalties, tomb robbery became increasingly common during times of political instability. Even workers involved in constructing royal tombs sometimes risked everything for gold hidden behind sealed stone doors. Economic desperation often proved stronger than fear. It is a reminder that no legal system, however severe, has ever completely eliminated crime. And that raises an intriguing question. If harsh punishments couldn't stop people from breaking the law, why did ancient civilizations continue creating increasingly elaborate legal systems? The answer lies not simply in punishment, it lies in power. Because the strangest laws in history were never only about controlling behavior, they were about defining what kind of civilization people believed they were building. And as our journey continues, we'll discover societies whose laws regulated everything from hairstyles to public behavior, from luxury clothing to family honor. Rules that sound unbelievable today, yet shaped the lives of